Yeah, if you can read 40, verse 40.
He took a stick in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag which he had, even in his pouch. And the sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. Through where?
That's fine right there. Okay. So what I'm getting at with that verse is David did not wait until he had grown into the armor. Okay? Especially if this was Saul's armor. Okay? Saul was like a head taller. Alright? So we're looking at Shaq, and he's coming up to Matt, and he's like, hey, take this armor. Okay? And Matt's like, okay, this is kind of heavy, you know? And so he actually couldn't take on that armor. So David did not wait until he could fit into this armor. He didn't wait until he had body built himself up. He didn't wait until he had taken training classes on how to use a sword or a shield. He did not wait at all. Our actions need to be taken as soon as we see the need or the problem. So he took the only thing he knew was a sling and stones. Okay? So when we come into those situations in life, and the faith just seems to be our faith seems to be very weak because we don't have this training, we don't have these materials. You know, kind of like how Eli's wanting to start a church. He doesn't have a building, he doesn't have anything. So what's he going to do? He's going to take what he has. Right. The few people that we have here, the sound equipment that we got for him to go to the flea market, you know, he's going to take what he has and use it for God. He's not going to wait and save up whatever it takes to rent a building and get all the supplies that he needs. He's going out right now with what he has, what he is trained with. We all know that Eli is trained with a guitar, you know. So what does he take over to the farmer's market? He takes his guitar and he shows them ministry through music. Okay? So David is almost at the point of no return now. He's basically said, I'll do this. They've pushed him out there. He doesn't have any armor. He's standing at this rocky edge of the valley between the Israelites and the Philistines. And this is the first showing of his actual works. Okay? So he's had substance. He's had things that he hoped for, you know. So he's fulfilling that part of faith. But his faith is still dead because it's been nothing but words. So Goliath sees David, and he automatically, like every bully does, he tries to make himself the alpha over David. So David will lose this battle. So does anyone have verse 41 through 44? Come on, Pam.
Okay. And the Philistines came on and drew the need unto David, and the man that bore the shield went before him. And the Philistine said unto David, I am a dog that you come to me with staves. And the Philistine corrected David by his gods. And the Philistine said unto David, come to me, and I will give you the flesh. I will give you the flesh unto the fowl and the air and the beasts of the field. And when David and the Philistine, you come, I can hardly see, sorry, come to me with your sword and with the spear and with the shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of the host of God and the armies of Israel, and you were defiled. Who was defiled?
Okay. So what happens is Goliath, as soon as he sees David, he says, what have they done here? He took it as an offense to him. And he says, I'm going to rip you up, and the birds are going to eat your flesh today. You know?
You know what I just thought of?
What?
Sorry, it's just comical to me. You know how all those professional wrestlers and all that, they trash talk each other?
Yeah.
David was the original trash talker.
So Goliath is trying to intimidate him, okay? So Goliath is using all of these words, and he's using his strength and how big he looks. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to rip you apart, little boy.
Goliath.
Okay?
Yeah.
But David keeps a hold of his faith. Because if you actually read that, and you have it ready for, okay.
What verse?
This is going to be verse 45 through 47.
I meant Goliath was the original.
Yeah.
45 through 47.
David does not hesitate. He strikes back at what Goliath says right away. What does 45 through
10, you
47?
want to read it?
It said,
10?
then said David to the Philistine, you come with me with a sword and a spear and with a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, of God and the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This is God of Israel. Is that it?
Okay, so David strikes back without hesitation. So he's got thrown down there, and he's down there on the battlefield, and you think that faith is going to be even weaker. It's not. This is where the faith. This is where David is standing up to someone. And we looked at this sword. Now, if you've ever seen like a statue of Goliath, and you look at that 9 to 10 foot tall, and you actually see what size sword he would actually have, that sword would be about 5 to 6 feet long. Okay, it would weigh about 100 pounds. Do you think you could lift that up and strike somebody with it? You could, but you would be, you know. If David would have just looked at what Goliath had compared to what he had, this faith would have been broken, you know, but he didn't let that bring him down. He focused on things that were unseen. And this is the part where it starts to get good. Read 48 through 49, and then I think it's like just the first portion of verse 50.
Then it happened when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand into his bag and took from it a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his head. And the stone sank into his forehead so that he fell on his face to the ground.
Okay.
Thus,
Oh, sorry. Where are you at?
49.
You're on what?
49.
Okay, I think there's half of verse 50 I want you to read.
Thus David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone.
Okay, that's kind of where. Okay, so this is where it gets good. Goliath starts wanting to talk bad mouth to him again. And what does David do? He doesn't sit there to listen to it again. He doesn't wait. He doesn't wait to have an argument. He just starts running at him. I can imagine this little boy or young adult, you know. He sees this great giant, and he's already thrown some harsh, foul language at him, and he's went back at him and told him, no, God is going to deliver me through this. And I can just see it as that giant starts wanting to bad mouth him again. He's like, I'm over this. And he starts running. And he gets a stone out of that bag and he gets it in the sling. And he doesn't step back into it, and he doesn't get a certain point like he's going to kick a field goal, He just runs at him. And he has this thing. And he takes that giant out, and the giant, boom, hits the ground. And imagine what everyone on both sides of these mountains, because I don't know if you know what this area is. It's kind of like a very rocky valley. And I don't know why they would get there for a battle, except for once you got down past these rocks, you couldn't really run back up. There's just no way. So I think it was set up like that. So once the battle started, no one could get out. Okay? So, and he takes down this giant, all right? And if any time David would have doubted during this, it probably never would have happened. If David stopped for just a second to think about it in his fleshly, mortal mind, Goliath probably would have slaughtered him, and the Philistines would have probably flooded over and killed them all. So if you can read, I think that's where the end of 50 and verse 51.
He struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran over and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled.
Okay, David completed his works and proved that his faith in God, he had faith in God by doing exactly what Goliath said he was going to do to him. Exactly what he said he was going to do to him. He took him down with a stone. He did it with something that God had already trained him to use. He'd probably taken down the lion and the bear with just a stone too. I never saw David as a sword fighter. There's nothing that says he was before this. Okay? So he took him down with what God had trained him with, which seemed like nothing. And then he did exactly what Goliath said he was going to do to him. And he picks up this sword. Imagine picking up a 100-pound piece of metal, lifting it high enough to chop the head off of a giant. Okay? And David did all of this. And so imagine what the Philistines and Israelites on both sides, imagine what their faces looked like. They were probably in awe. But whose faith, if they had any, if the Philistines had faith, we're going to take them out. Or if the Israelites had faith that God's going to deliver us. Okay? Whose faith at that time do you think just got ignited by the works?
All of Israel.
Okay? All of Israel's. Alright? The Philistines have went from, I have faith, we ain't got no works, we don't have anything to show for it, but we have faith that we're going to take you guys out because we have a giant. Well, guess what? That giant didn't do anything but run his mouth. Okay? So they had a substance. They had things hoped for. Alright? They had things unseen that never obtained evidence. Okay? There was nothing that said, other than a big, burly, 9-foot-tall man, that they were ever going to conquer these Israelites. Okay? But David, he showed through his works, through his faith, that he showed the evidence of the things that were unseen to these Israelites. They were so blinded because of this big, huge giant. But now the faith that came back to them. What do? You read on. They basically chase them down and start taking them out. And so 1 John 4 says, everyone that has been born of God overcomes this world. And our faith is the victory that has overcome this world. So David not only showed this faith in God through his words, he proved them through those works. David's faith nor the faith of Israel did not die that day because David acted in his faith. And he was faithful to his faith. He didn't change it. He didn't say, okay, well, if someone helps me, I can take this giant out. He was faithful to his faith. I don't know if you can understand that, how I wrote that down. I'm not good with wording when it comes to beautiful sentences and poetry. But he was faithful to what he believed. David did not ask for extra help. He didn't ask for more time. He didn't ask for a certain weapon. He didn't ask for a 5.56. He just went forth and did what he knew. That's an inside joke for another group. What he already had available. The only shield that David had a shield. It was the shield of faith.
That's right.
That's what he took out on that battlefield, was the shield of faith.
And the sword of the Spirit.
And the sword of
God.
It did.
That's right.
We could go into a whole nother series with just the armor of God on
You know,
this.
what's really cool is I look back when you said that, I didn't know how long it was, and it was 40 days that
That
they
they
were, and
stood
it's the
there,
same
yeah.
with Jesus, you know, anyway,
Yeah.
it was cool.
And so, who else had great faith that day? So in this whole story, it wasn't Saul, we know that. It wasn't David's brothers. The only one that had great faith that day was Goliath. He was very haughty.
Oh, yeah.
He thought, ain't nobody taking me out. He had great faith. He told him that he was going to feed him to the birds. But David never gave Goliath a chance to show that. Instead, he went forth full throttle, like I said before. When he started opening his mouth, he's like, I'm over this. And he went full throttle and took out this giant. So, people can run their mouths all day long. It still does not show any faith whatsoever. We have to have works to actually prove our faith. And this has to do with in all parts of our life, especially when we're trying to witness to people. We cannot go up and just quote Bible verses, you know? And then when things happen in our life, you go, oh, I don't know, maybe God's doing this to me because of this or that, because I've been through that a lot, you know? We cannot show weakness to people out in the world that we are trying to witness to get them to understand what faith and salvation is. We have to show them that we have strength, that God gives us strength. 1 Timothy 6:12 says, to fight the good fight of faith, take hold of eternal life to which you were called to. Israel had not defeated the Philistines in over 100 years at this point. I don't know if you ever look into the history of that. When I actually do like little Bible sermons, oh man, I want to know all the history and why it says this and what that word means and what the Philistines, you know, if they had swords or if they were working with shovels or what. But the Philistines, Israel had not defeated them in over 100 years. So it took a lot of faith to win this battle. And so I'm going to skip through, I had some notes from one of my professors, Ed Henson. Man, he was a great guy. Make you really understand what the Bible was saying in certain parts. I'm going to go down to the Great Commission tells us to go and make disciples of all nations. And the faith that he gives us, is that he will always be with us. But without works, our faith is dead. So I'm going to close with this story of when we witness to people. Have you ever had God tell you to witness to a person, but you're like, God, I don't have enough time, or I'm going to have to walk 5 more feet this way? You know, you ever have something that you feel like not today, or you pray, God, maybe tomorrow, or God, help me, I'll text them later, or God, send somebody else. I've experienced that. I've experienced that because of multiple reasons. Sometimes I was kind of afraid. I didn't know what to say. I don't even know this guy. Or sometimes I felt like, man, I've talked to him 1,000,000 times. Why should I go talk to him again? So we'll do that with people, and that's their life. That's the eternity on the line. But yet, I was thinking about that one day when I was in Big Lots. And so I'm in Big Lots, and I walk in and I see these aisles, and the aisles are set up about like this. It's one row here and one row here, and they look exactly, they're identical. These have the same, this front part has the same shirts as this, and pants. It's like a mirror image, except for this side is kind of cleaned out. There's only a few left. This side's almost full. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I look, and the prices, same shirt, same sizes and everything, says $2.99. This side says $3. Okay?
Huh.
Same pants. This side says $11.99. This side says $12. And it was like that all the way back to the clothing area. And I'm like, why in the world would they do this? Okay, I found out later, because I asked the person at the counter. It was a college study about how people will go out of their way to say that. You got to understand, they would have to buy 25 shirts just to save a quarter, but they will. And then they moved it. And what they did is they put all that, ones that were even dollar amounts at the front of the store, and the ones that were that 1 penny off way back in the back. And guess what? Same thing happened. People would walk right past all of this, burn up all that energy to save that 1 penny. But we won't do that to save somebody's soul.
Uh-oh.
They'll go out of their way, search through things. She even said they'll bring them to the counter. They'll bring the $3 shirt to the counter and say, "Hey, do you have this size in the $2.99?" And the rule was, we'll just give it to them for $2.99. But people would go out of their way to go ask the management if they can get that penny off. And that is so insignificant. Yet that's how we treat people. That's how we treat family. That's how we treat people we know at work and school. Is they're just kind of insignificant. I get it later, or I need to be here. We will pass up what we're supposed to be doing to go do something else. And that's not what God has called us to do. God has called us to reach everyone, whether they want it or not. There's so many people that I believe probably will never see heaven, okay? But if I have a chance, if I'm with them and I can actually bring the Word of God back up, just to say one little thing, just to push a little bit more. You can't push anybody to hell. I mean, they're jumping. They're headed there anyhow. What are you gonna scare them to hell number 2? There's no hell number 2. They're already headed there. They need to come to the realization. And I know we can annoy people, and the Holy Spirit will tell us, "Yeah, don't touch that right now." But we need to be witnessing to everyone we can.
Amen.
Family members especially. That's the ones I have the hardest with. They're my family, yet somehow you're just kind of like, you don't want them to hate you or something. But their eternity is on the line. So back to what this started with, faith without works really is dead. Goliath, the dead, headless Goliath, is the proof of that. Goliath had all the faith that he was going to take out this little boy.
That's right.
But he didn't show any works. Now he's dead.
You know what? Just think about this, though, about the faith. A lion come up to eat him up.